Thank you so much for joining me. It's so wonderful to know that there are some wonderful audiences out there today. And I'm hoping that this video will save like last week so you can go back and enjoy it even after Play at Us MoMA our Instagram Live hour has come to a close. So before we get started, happy Wednesday, everybody. I hope that today you are safe and well. We have a very exciting story today and a very exciting art activity. And I just remembered that I might have forgotten to post what materials you'll be needing today, but all you're going to need today is some paper, pencil, or a pen, or some sort of mark-making device. But we'll get to that a little bit later. Before we get started today, I wanted to take a minute to do some breathing with everyone. So, just like last week, we're going to take a deep breath on the count of 3. And this breath is going to be for you and for me, okay? So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Ooh, I can already feel my shoulders relaxing, my jaw relaxing, my eyes relaxing. Okay, so this second breath is going to be for our family. Okay, so on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. And let it out. Oh, it's starting to feel even better. Okay, now this last breath, it's going to be for our community. Okay, so on the count of 3, and let's count in Spanish this time. I need to get my practice, okay? Okay, 1, 2, 3. And let it out. Doesn't that feel good? Just to take a couple deep breaths and just kind of relax into your body a little bit. Feels good, huh? And friends, if you hear some noise in the background, one of the reasons that Teacher Holly is a little behind today is because I had to take care of some creatures that rely on me. That would be my cats and my puppy. So you might hear them kind of walking around getting breakfast today. Did everybody else's day start out that way too? Like, last week I was thinking about the time, the narrative timeline that everybody was working on. I'm still looking forward to seeing those drawings, but it was artwork just about your day, right? And it got me thinking about the rituals that we have in our day-to-day, how we do things, at what time we do them. And I know right now with the stay-at-home order in place, that some of those rituals have been disrupted, and it can be hard to stick to a schedule, especially when it seems like the days just run together. And I've also seen a lot of friends creating new rituals and learning new things in this time, which is also fun and exciting too. And also just want to remind everybody that if you're not into creating a new ritual right now, if for you it's just to be, that's okay too. All ways that we are going through this unique experience are valid. So it's a-okay. Nobody should feel pressured into doing anything right now that doesn't feel okay for them, right? But that's actually one of the reasons I love doing play so much, is because it is a ritual for me. It's an opportunity to connect with some friends virtually, and a chance to share a story that I've been really inspired by and that I hope others will find inspiration in. And so to come back to this idea of ritual, we're actually going to be reading a story today that starts out with a ritual and how that ritual became a lifelong practice that has inspired many people. And it is called Grandpa in the Library, How Charles White Learned to Paint. Some of you may know that Charles White was a very prolific artist in this, who lived during the 20th century, and was a student, no, a teacher at Otis College. So I don't think it was called Otis College at the time. But many of his students live and work in Southern California today. And you might have also seen his work on walls. We call those murals, right? And actually in films as well. There's a really great film. Oh, why is the name? You know what? Comment if you remember what the film is. I think it had Eartha Kitt's in it. I'm pretty sure Eartha Kitt's in it. But and I know I saw the drawing because last year the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, LACMA, had a retrospective about the work of Charles White, and it was beautiful. And actually, while I was there, his son, C. Ian White, who's also the author of this lovely book, was there and was giving a tour to young artists, and it was pretty amazing. Shh, shh, shh. So sorry, that was Chubb. She's getting very excited about the story, as you can hear. Hey. Shh, shh, shh. So, yeah, I bought this book almost immediately after that too. Who am I kidding? I think I bought it immediately after I got out of the gallery. And I just was reviewing it yesterday, researching it. I was like, I think this is a great story for us to read today, especially because we've been doing a lot of drawing. And as we see, our wonderful protagonist is going to be doing a lot of drawing as well. I don't think I'm giving anything away. So maybe we should just get started, right? Okay. You know what, before we begin, let's take one more deep breath. And let it out. And you know what? Before we begin, take a minute to get comfy. And Teacher Holly is going to take a moment to put their friend Chubbs, back in their room, okay? Thanks for your patience, friends. I thought Chubbs wanted to enjoy the story with us today, so. Okay, are we ready? All right. Grandpa in the Library, How Charles White Learned to Paint by C. Ian White. And this is published by MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Dad, where are we going? We're going to the library to see a mural painted by your grandpa Charles. Oh, does anybody recognize that library there? It says it's the Los Angeles Public Library at Exposition Park, which is actually not far from me. Gordon, look, the words on the mural say love, hope, dignity, and education. This is what he believed in, and this is what he wanted to share in his art. How did Grandpa Charles become an artist? Did he start when he was very young as me? Even younger, Gordon. It started when Charles, my father, was about to turn 5 years old. Wow, look at that beautiful mural. I know we can see a little bit of it here, right? But what are some things that you see? It looks like there's someone playing a guitar. Looks like someone's holding a book. Somebody's holding their hands together. This almost looks like somebody sitting down to weave, but maybe they're just resting. Your great-grandma Marsh worked long days cleaning houses, and Charles was too old to go to work with her. There were no preschools or daycare centers when your grandpa was 5, and babysitters were too expensive. So she took him to the Chicago Public Library each morning with his lunchbox. She reminded him to be polite, and then she went to work. She left him at the library all day alone? Yes, all day. Great-Grandma Marsh assured the librarian that her son was a very well-mannered young man who would sit nicely in the corner with his books. And he did? Wow. Look at all those books that are there. That's actually my dreams, to be in the library with a lot of books right now. Yes, he did. Charles liked the library. It was quiet, like home. The librarians were strict, like his mother. He couldn't read yet, but they gave him picture books about places he'd never been and the people who lived there. He looked at the books and watched the clock on the wall, waiting for the big hand to reach 12 and the little hand to reach 6. That was when Great-Grandma Marsh would come back. Okay, so here we have the clock, and it's hard to read when there's not any numbers, right? But if we look where the hand is up here, it seems like it's pointing to 12, and we have the little hand here, looks like it's pointing at 6, right? Oh, and there's some words on the clock too. It says, the world is founded on thoughts and ideas, not on cotton or iron. Emerson. Oh, wow. Thoughts and ideas. I'm going to have to look at that quote. Okay. Your grandpa drew the shapes and figures he had seen in the books on pieces of scrap paper that his mother saved for him. He loved to draw. He drew landscapes like the ones in his books and people like the ones he had seen in magazines. He missed his mother when she was at work, and he wished he could draw her too. He thought about her cleaning windows and dusting furniture, moving quickly through the rooms of big houses. She could make a silver tray shine like a mirror. Oh, so here's young Gordon, and he's drawing. What does he have? Looks like paper and a pencil to me. It seems over here he's thinking about his mom, working very hard. Great-Grandma Marsh began to take Charles to the Art Institute of Chicago on Saturdays. There they walked through rooms filled with paintings by great masters. What are great masters? Great masters are artists who worked very hard for a long time to be very good at what they did. From looking at their art, Charles learned that there were many things to paint and many ways to paint them. Okay, so what's going on here? So Charles and his mother are at the Art Institute of Chicago. Looks like they're in one of the big galleries, and they're surrounded by these large paintings. And some paintings are actually quite small. I love here too that they're sitting on a bench and talking to one another about what they see. This is kind of like what we do when we're at play at MoMA, or if you've ever been on a field trip or you come to a tour, right? So see, talking about art with someone very close to you, we're always doing that, right? Okay. The following year, Charles started school and learned to read. In the afternoons, when school was over, he went back to the library and read every book he could. Did he stop drawing? No, he got better at it. Now he enjoyed drawing the different people he passed on the streets of Chicago as he walked home. Oh, wow. So what kind of people are on the streets? And I believe this is Charles as he's walking by. So we see that there's someone in a suit. Looks like there are two women chatting together. These people over here, they look like they're facing away, but it's kind of interesting the way their bodies are positioned. And there's a young man here who's walking. And then we have a man and looks like a young boy here. Looks like he's shining his shoes. Oh, lots of things going on in the streets of Chicago. Okay. When Charles was 7, Great-Grandma Marsh gave him a set of oil paints for Christmas. Oh, he was excited. He had never painted before. He tried them out but grew impatient. He was confused by the materials that came with the set. The stand oil and turpentine. The paint was very different from the pencils he was used to. Wow, look at all those paints. It looks like he's working on a very beautiful picture. Hey friends, do you ever feel intimidated by new materials or challenged by new materials you might pick up? Yeah, I do too. But I wonder how Charles is going to figure this one out. Okay. We're gonna get there, right? Okay. Did he give up? Oh no. One day, when he was walking past the Art Institute on Michigan Avenue, he saw art students in the park. They were painting landscape pictures, and they had paints just like his. He overheard one of them say that they would be painting in the park all week. Oh, so maybe Charles is getting some ideas, right? So we have some painters in the park over here. And they're painting landscapes, but what are they painting with? I think that might be some canvas, and it looks like it's an easel, and probably in their hand is probably a paintbrush or maybe even a pencil so they can draw the underdrawing or the cartoon. Big words today. Good art vocab. Ooh, so he went back to the park the next day. He watched the students carefully and observed that they mixed a little stand oil and turpentine in a container and then added the paint. Every day that week he watched them work, and every day he learned a little more. Charles imitated them with his paint set, using cardboard cut from boxes, but the paint soaked right into the cardboard. It wasn't like the material the students used. Oh, wow. But I love Charles's creative thinking, and I love how he's experimenting with different materials, don't you? At home, Charles noticed the window shade in Great-Grandma Marsh's living room looked a bit like that material. He cut out a nice big piece and painted a landscape on it. He was an artist! He thought his mother would be so surprised. She was surprised, all right, but she was not pleased. Charles was an artist, but he had a lot more work to do. He had to think about what he wanted his artwork to look like and what he wanted it to be about. Oh, wow. Look at Charles's beautiful landscape, but also look at his mother's shade over here. Yeah. So remember, friends, before you start cutting up shades in the house right now, always remember to ask permission first, right? Charles loved the history stories that he read in the library. He also loved his own family stories, which he learned from his Aunt Harriet, his Aunt Missouri, and his great Aunt Hasty. Every summer, his mother took him by train to visit them in Mississippi. They told him about his family, their mothers and fathers, aunts and uncles, and about people who had been enslaved, like great Aunt Hasty. They told him about life in the South and life in the country, about working on a farm. Oh, so you can see Charles is on a train traveling from Chicago to Mississippi to visit with his family and hear their stories. Does anybody else do that too? Travel with your family? And when you're there, do you take a moment to talk with your relatives that are there? Yeah, so Charles is learning a lot about his family during these trips. Charles wanted to tell these stories in his pictures. As he got older and took classes at the Art Institute, he learned more about painting and drawing. He discovered how to paint his stories in ways that showed how important they were to him. He never stopped learning about art, and he never stopped studying. He kept reading and he kept looking at art even when he grew up. Wow. So we can see this drawing ritual that Charles started when he was almost 5. It's continuing throughout his life. And wow, look, I love this. What's going on here? Look like a drawing of something that you recognize? I think it is a horse. And Charles, can imagine it's Charles is showing how you can break this down into sections to draw your horse. It's pretty cool. What did Grandpa paint? Grandpa painted African Americans. He painted mothers, fathers, and children. He painted people who were enslaved and the people who worked to free them. He painted writers, musicians, scientists, and leaders. He painted them marching and singing, thinking about freedom and working to make the world better. He painted important people such as Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Harry Belafonte, and Mcleod Jackson. He painted portraits of strangers and loved ones,
scenes of struggle and triumph. He painted murals that became part of the buildings they were painted on and the cities that the buildings were in. Wow. So you recognize some of those names? Some of our friends might. And Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, who are both, were both born in Maryland, where I grew up, were enslaved as young people and worked to free African Americans who were enslaved in the United States. And Harry Belafonte is a leader of the civil rights movement. So these are some wonderful historical figures to look up and learn more about. And there's also a lot of artwork made about them too. And I find that very inspiring that Charles White chose to depict the most important people and figures in his life and who he thought were important to document. Okay, so Charles became an artist and he also became a teacher. Some of his students are now famous artists just like him. We talked about that a little bit earlier, right? He taught them how to make art about things that were important to them. He taught them that their voices, ideas, and stories were valued, and they are. Oh, wow. So what's going on here? We can see a couple paintings by Charles White, actually, and I think a couple of his students, too. I recognize some of them in this beautiful drawing, and I believe that's actually him right there talking with one of his students about what's going on. Some of our older friends who are joining us today, you might recognize this artwork here by an artist named David Hammonds. Oh, wow. So we can see more of Charles White's work here. And actually that thumbnail of the painting that we saw earlier, we can see it more here. We can see that there is a man playing a guitar, this woman holding her hands, this young person here who's reading, and this woman here. It looks like she's more in thought, or she's kind of watching everyone here. Very cool. Awesome. Oh, and actually there's a really great biography about Charles White that's in the back. So let's read it together. So Charles White was born in 1918 in Chicago, where in the 1930s he became a critical member, critical means important, of a budding community of African American artists. His career took him to New York, through the American South and Mexico, and ultimately to Los Angeles, where he lived and worked for more than 20 years. In all of these places, White contributed to the local art scenes and established ties with a range of creative people, writers, musicians, and performers, as well as other visual artists. In addition to being a highly skilled draftsman or drawer, right? Okay. Painter and printmaker. He was a dedicated teacher, and he helped inspire and shape the careers of several generations of artists. White made work that is figurative and representational. So that's the opposite of abstract. So things or people that we would recognize right away. Featuring images of African Americans drawn from history and tradition to reveal and celebrate their considerable, if often overlooked, accomplishments. His goal, he said, was to make a very broad, universal statement about the search for dignity, the search for a deeper understanding of the conflicts and contradiction of life. What I'm trying to do is talk about the history of humanity. By the time of his death in 1979, White was widely admired for his images of dignity and his efforts to share his vision with the widest possible audience. Wow. And I love that they've included a photograph of Charles White working on this painting, which is actually a mural. It's called the Mary Mcleod Bethune mural. I'm not sure where it is, though. Somebody can maybe tell me where that is, or I can look through later and share. I also love that there's a very young a very looks like it's an older portrait of a young Charles White working, and you can see actually that he started on the underdrawing of this work, and it's at various stages. It's getting more detailed. Wow. So it's a pretty powerful story, huh? And I know we started out talking about ritual today. Did we see some ritual in Charles's work? So when he goes to the library, what does he do each day? He draws, right? But does he stop drawing after he leaves the library and ends up going to school? No, right? He keeps drawing. He keeps finding more subjects, more people, more ideas to include in his artwork. And as we saw later, what became very important for him was to draw and incorporate representations of African Americans into his work. He felt that was extremely important. And I think what he did was extremely revolutionary, because there weren't many artists at that time who were doing that. And I think as artists, it's important for us to show that there is as much rich diversity in the world as there can be in an artistic practice. Maybe that's a little simplified today, but that's where I am right now. But this is such an incredible story, and I wanted to share it with all of you today. And also to start thinking more about our day-to-day rituals and how they can sustain us, how they can impact us, and ultimately how they can inspire others, just like Charles White's work has inspired countless number of students and artists all over the world. And you know, I think even people who maybe don't consider themselves artists, but yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at today. So we can keep the conversation going. So friends, what I wanted to do today with our drawing activity was to just get into the practice of drawing. We've been doing it a lot over these last couple weeks, which has been very exciting. And I think I might have shared with you that I was even intimidated to start drawing again, because even though I've taught drawing classes in the past, drawing's not exactly what I would call my strongest skill set. I much prefer to make collages. I love to cut things up and put them together in bold, creative ways. I like to write poetry. I like to do lots of things that don't involve a pencil and an eraser. I'm just going to be honest. But, you know, just like we saw with Charles White, he just started drawing every day. And I started to think about artists who I knew of before I knew about Charles White's work, who also just started drawing every day. Just as a way to, to use their imagination. Marc Chagall comes to mind, Frida Kahlo comes to mind, and now Charles White, of course. And so I thought, if you've got some very simple materials like a pencil or a pen or a marker or a crayon, some paper, and it doesn't have to be paper like this. It can be a dyed paper that's like, what do you call that? The construction paper. It could even be like a circular that comes in, making sure that you've properly sanitized it and nobody needs to use it. Maybe hold off, don't use the toilet paper or the paper towels right now, because those can be in limited supply. But if you have something that you can draw on, or you know what, I know some friends probably have a tablet. You can even draw on your tablet. It'll feel a little bit different, but you can do that there as well. And you know what works too? Even chalk. If you have some paper and some chalk, or if you can go outside, remember to practice physical distancing and draw on the sidewalk, you can do that there too. And actually, if you do that, then that becomes a public artwork like a mural, and I bet it would brighten someone's day. Okay, so where are we getting to? Yes. So one of the things that Charles White did every day was to draw the things that were around him. It could be people, It could be a table and a chair. I'm actually eyeing my plants that are right next to me, but just looking at different things for inspiration. And so that's what we're going to do today. I want you to think of something that's in your home right now. Could be another person, could be a parent, could be an elder, it could be your sibling, it could even be yourself. If you have a mirror, you can draw yourself. Or think of an object. Could be a plant, could be a lamp, or if you're like me and you have multiple animal friends in the house, you could even have them sit for you. I know sometimes they like to squirm, but you might get them in a moment. So once you've got your materials, just want you to take a second, find something in the room that looks interesting to you. And the first thing that we're gonna do is actually be a little silly, okay? Because instead of just jumping into drawing right away, we're gonna do something that my friend teacher Barbara likes to do, which is called it's called a blind drawing. But this is a drawing, I think the name of it, we need to find a new name for it, because you're looking at something, but you're just not looking at your paper, okay? So I actually see one of my fuzzy friends, and I'm gonna just start just looking at her, trying to get as many details about her as possible, which is hard because my eyesight's not the best. But she's kind of relaxed right now, and she's actually sitting on my couch. Oops, she hears me talking about her. She's like, "What are you doing? I didn't sign up to be a model today." Oh, okay, friends. So this is my drawing. As you can see, it kind of looks like a noodle soup. Oof. But let's see if we can see to certain facts. You're gonna have to trust me. I see a little bit of ears. Actually, Bobby, that's my one kitty, looks like a bunny right now. But you can see her ears, her little tail. She doesn't really have, she's got what's called a bobtail. She doesn't have a long tail. She's got this little bobtail. And she's sitting on my couch, which I've tried to draw the buttons that are here. Ugh. I know it's silly, I know it's a little goofy, but hey, that's okay. And the other thing I've done is loosened up my drawing arm a little bit so that, one, I'm a little bit looser, and I've hopefully made the drawing process less intimidating. But I just did that with pencil. Now, if I tried to do that with something that is more permanent, like a pen, something that I couldn't erase, right? Oh, maybe Chubbs is a little jealous that I didn't draw her. Hey, Chubbs, do you want to be my model? Do you want to be my model? Oh, now she's all into it. Okay, well, you gotta hold still for me. I know it's hard. It's when the model's not on the screen, friends, but Chubbs seems to enjoy this one. Ooh, this one is serving looks today. Oh, okay, well, I'm gonna show Chubbs first. Do you recognize that? Do you recognize that little dog right there? She's like, what? So Chubbs is actually sitting for me, and I got her face. Looks very human to me. But you know what? Yeah, Chubbs is pretty close to human companionship right now. So she has some human features here. And also, I haven't drawn a dog in a long time, so that was fun. Okay. So see, friends, we're starting to see some recognizable things, right? Okay, so you know what we're gonna do now? You can, play around with your contours for a little bit just to get your muscles nice and loose. The next thing that you can do is maybe take 5 minutes. I know 5 minutes sounds like a long time, but it really goes by fast. And if any of you have seen me in the gallery for a school program or a public program, 5 minutes goes by like that, right? But I'd like you to take 5 minutes today and find, a nice quiet spot and just draw. Draw what's ever in that spot. And then if you're feeling up to it, I'd love for you to share it at @PlayAtAsMoA. That's #PlayAtAsMoA. You can also share it using the hashtag #AsMoA, ESMOA, at home, because that's where all of our programming is taking place now, right? At home. I just want to see what inspired you today. And maybe this drawing maybe through drawing you can create a nice creative ritual for yourself, just like Charles White did. And you never know where that ritual can take you. And there's power in our rituals, just like we saw with Charles White, right? Because it gave him a powerful instrument to show stories and to show people that really mattered to him, like his family, his friends, his heroes and his sheroes, and his community. I think that's a good thought to leave with today. Thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to see you all next week, Wednesday, 10 a.m., hopefully not 10:05 Pacific Standard Time. And I'm going to try to save this video, so we'll go right to our TV. What else? If you are an adult friend, you can join Teacher Barbara's Just Draw class on Fridays from 10 to 11 over Zoom, which is ongoing. Just visit our website or visit our Facebook event page. Take care, friends. I look forward to seeing you soon.